stop me if you've heard this one. You're talking to a devout Christian, maybe a relative. Maybe that guy on YouTube calls himself a soldier for Christ. And the conversation inevitably turns to one topic, morality. They look you dead in the eye, usually with the pitying gaze of someone watching a puppy walk into traffic. And they ask the classic, deeply flawed question. If you don't believe in God, what is stopping you from raping, murdering, and becoming a general menace to society? If there's no hell, what's your reason not to be a monster? And I always think, wow, thanks for admitting that the only thing standing between you and a straight-up killing spree is the cosmic equivalent of a security guard who isn't even real. But today, we're not just going to dissect that ridiculous argument. We're going deeper. We're discussing psychotic individuals, and yes, I mean people whose internal wiring is fundamentally self-serving and potentially aggressive, disguising themselves as beacons of virtuous morality. They wear this mask of piousness like an ill-fitting polyester Halloween costume, all in order to prevent that true screaming monster imprisoned deep within their judgmental, hypocritical minds from clawing its way to the surface. Welcome back to Secular Strike Back, formerly known as the Kim McPhail Podcast. I'm your host, Toothless Grin Kim, and today we're exposing the profound, generally terrifying lack of genuine conscience that underpins religious morality. This isn't just about belief. This is about psychological performance art. So, the argument, the one where Christians claim you need God to be good, is more than just poor philosophy. It is, as many of us ex-Christians and atheists have pointed out for years, a public, screaming admission of moral failure. When a Christian says, I would commit atrocities if I didn't fear hellfire, what they are truly confessing is not their faith, but their profound personal inability to conjure genuine empathy. They are publicly admitting that they are actually incapable of performing a true good moral act motivated by altruism. Their goodness is nothing more than obedience, an attempt to protect their own celestial credit score. They are suppressing who they really are inside. They aren't making a conscious, reasoned decision to be good and do good for others because it reduces suffering and increases human flourishing. No, they are just following orders, like a child who only cleans their room because mom threatened to take away their PlayStation. Think about that for a second. The greatest moral acts committed by the God-fearing are fundamentally transactional. They aren't saying, I choose not to harm this person because they are a fellow conscious being worthy of respect. They are actually saying, I choose not to harm this person because if I do, the big boss in the sky might toss me into the eternal fire pit. And that would be inconvenient. It's the morality of a hostage negotiation, not the morality of a mature, functioning adult. And frankly, it's hilarious when you realize how much cognitive dissonance it requires to brag about that kind of self-serving compliance. The Christian who adheres strictly to the law out of fear of divine punishment is not a moral exemplar. They are a cosmic accountant nervously trying to avoid an audit. They are simply too afraid of consequences to let the inner monster out to play. Their moral goodness is a high security prison for their actual self-desires. While I spend a lot of time speaking of the damages of religion, especially that of Christianity, and I encourage decent, thoughtful followers to leave it, I have a necessary dark caveat. If you truly are a Christian who believes the only thing keeping you from going full Dexter is the fear of eternal damnation and that God is watching your every move like a creepy spiritual stalker, then I guess I'd rather have you remain in the religion. Stay in your box, sweetheart. Keep the lid on that inner monster, because the alternative seems to be a crime spree. But here is the devastating, reality-based truth. Most Christians harm others while in the faith, believing themselves to be performing moral acts and obeying God's will. This is the central paradox we need to ridicule and dismantle. The truly immoral Christian isn't the one struggling to keep their hands off the neighbor's ox. It's the one who weaponizes their entire belief system. I'm talking about the judgmental, the self-righteous, the hypocritical Christian. The one who is emotionally, verbally, and sometimes physically abusive, all while convinced they are operating under divine ordination. These are the people who scream, "Love the sinner, hate the sin," which is just a fancy way of saying, I'm going to ruin your life while simultaneously claiming moral superiority. They hate LGBTQ plus people, at least the majority of these Christians do. They condemn women who make choices about their own bodies, shame their children, and demand rigid social control over everyone around them. And they do it with a smug, self-satisfied grin because they think they are obeying the creator of the universe. In both instances I mentioned, the suppressed monster and the active abuser, how many of these individuals would you comfortably consider to possess genuine, grounded, healthy morality? And my answer to this is none of them. They are all, by objective ethical measures, immoral. And this is why so many atheists who are ex-Christians made the wisest decision of their lives: to leave Christianity for reality, reason, and empathy. They asked the hard questions, did the research, and found the religion to be fundamentally false, dangerously narcissistic, and ethically bankrupt. Contrast that performative, fear-based morality with ours. It's these same ex-Christians who are now atheists, and also the atheists who have been atheists all of their lives, who see Christianity for what it really is: a toxic, controlling narrative. These ex-Christians and atheists are the ones who display true and genuine empathy for others. Our morality is founded on the understanding that suffering is bad and minimizing suffering is good. It's built on the realization that we are all in this terrifying, beautiful, brief existence together. We don't need a vengeful daddy figure watching us through a cosmic peephole to tell us that hurting others is wrong. We know it because we are capable of imagining ourselves in their position. We use reason, logic, and compassion. In this instance, mathematically speaking, there are demonstrably more ex-Christians and lifelong atheists who possess a robust, genuine moral system than the Christians who claim they are moral yet are truly immoral individuals fueled by a false belief system. We are the adults who don't need a timeout corner or a sticker chart to operate in society. We are the ones demonstrating that genuine goodness is a choice made in the absence of threat, not an obligation fulfilled under duress. So now let's drag the Christian God into the courtroom for a minute, shall we? Christianity has a group of followers who claim to follow a loving God, and yet their texts describe a homicidal, maniacal, utterly immoral deity who they nonetheless want to obey unquestioningly. Do you see the similarities here? On one side, you have Christians claiming the moral high ground while displaying toxic, cruel, and self-serving behaviors. They claim they are loving, yet spew hate. They claim they are righteous, yet inflict emotional and sometimes physical abuse. Sometimes. On the other side, you have the God that they serve. They claim this God is loving, good, and righteous. Yet, according to the Bible, their own sacred text, this God has committed the worst crimes against humanity you can think of. Mass drowning, the flood, ethnic cleansing, various genocides in the Old Testament, and the systematic murder of children, such as the plague against Egypt, although there were other instances as well in the Bible. It's not just that they follow a bad leader. It's that they have intellectually and emotionally justified the actions of a biblical character who, if he showed up in modern times, would instantly be designated as the single most dangerous terrorist in history. This is the psychological trick. Christians have trained themselves to see cruelty as discipline, genocide as justice, and abuse as love because their foundational text demands it. They have to twist their internal moral compass into a pretzel to rationalize loving a deity who routinely commits atrocities. Christianity disguises itself as the ultimate source of good, while underneath that veneer, it is full of systematic hate and cruelty against anyone who does not conform to its narrow, archaic belief system. It acts exactly like a cult that demands absolute conformity and justifies the domination of outsiders. And it is these Christians, the ones who have successfully rationalized biblical violence, who we truly need to fear and speak out against. Their false belief system isn't just a matter of private faith. It is a public danger. And the reason this system is so effective at maintaining control is because of two psychological tactics, which I've mentioned several times over in my videos. We will discuss it again. Projection and gaslighting that they use. These are twin pillars of performative piety. When we, as atheists, skeptics, and exchristians, point out the verifiable, documented immoralities of the faith, the hypocrisy, the fear, the abuse, what is the immediate response? It's projection. They immediately hurl their own worst behaviors and deepest fears back at us. They claim we are the immoral ones. We are the lost, the hateful, the ones who want to destroy society. This is the moral masquerade in full swing. They are terrified that if they stop fearing God, they will become the monsters they inherently know they are capable of being. So they project that monstrousness onto the people who don't need the threat of hell to behave responsibly. They are the ones driving 90 miles an hour down the highway, swerving between lanes and constantly honking at the people walking on the sidewalk, all while yelling, "You people are the real danger to traffic." It's a magnificent display of self-deception and moral acrobatics. They place themselves in a moral superior position while simultaneously displaying the very same immoral behaviors and actions they claim we are doing, all in order to make themselves feel righteous and superior. And when they realize their flimsy arguments aren't working, they switch to gaslighting, questioning our reality, demanding that we ignore the historical evidence of religious harm, and telling us that our trauma under their system was actually love or God's pruning. They wish to silence any dissent and instead command conformity, because conformity is safety to them. Dissent is the crack in the moral skin suit that lets the monster peek out. As atheists, ex-Christians, skeptics, and those deconstructing, we must continue speaking up and speaking out against these injustices. We must stand firmly on the side of reason, logic, truth, reality, and above all, genuine empathy for others. We must be the adults in the room. We stand here grounded in reality while they act like childhood bullies on a school playground, wielding the threat of their invisible, authoritative father figure. They are demanding compliance from the innocent victims of their abuse. Their tantrum morality is based purely on avoiding punishment, whereas our ethics are based on building a better and kinder world. They are the ones who need the threat of eternal spanking to share their toys. We are the ones who understand that sharing is simply the functional requirement for peaceful coexistence. When we observe these displays of Christian cruelty, we should not react with their level of childish rage, but with the cool, calm critique of an adult observing absurd behavior. We must point out the ridiculous premise that bowing to a homicidal maniac is somehow noble, and refuse to legitimize their claim to the moral high ground. We are holding the line for a morality that actually works, a morality that requires consciousness, critical thought, and empathy, not just fearful obedience to a celestial tyrant who keeps changing the rules. The moral masquerade is failing. The stitching on that skin suit of piety is coming apart, and the genuinely selfish, transactional, and abusive psychology underneath is finally being seen for what it is. It is our job to keep pulling the thread. So, my fellow ex-Christians, atheists, skeptics, and deconstructors, we have spent much time examining the profound psychological dissonance required to maintain this particular brand of religious morality. We've seen how fear masquerades as goodness, and how compliance is mistaken for conscience. We've unmasked the psychotic individual who hides behind the mantle of faith to justify their cruelty or suppress their latent violence. We've established that the morality system offered by this particular strain of Christianity is not only flawed, it is actively dangerous, transforming naturally selfish individuals into self-righteous, abusive cult members who believe they are doing God's work. It's a terrifying observation, but understanding the mechanisms of their deception is our greatest weapon. So, here's the discussion question I want you to tackle in the comments below. Do these types of fear-based hypocritical Christians, the ones who admit they need the threat of hell to behave, display any genuine, authentic morality traits whatsoever, or are they exclusively disguising something far more frightening and psychologically broken underneath their facade? Let me hear your thoughts. Let's dissect the psychology of the moral masquerade together. If you enjoyed this podcast and you appreciate the work I do here at Secular Strike Back, please consider supporting it. Exposing the absurdity and danger of religious dogma takes time and resources, and every little bit helps. You can help by making a $3 monthly donation by going to my Patreon and becoming a member. The link is in the description below. Thanks for watching, for thinking critically, and for standing on the side of reality. I'm Toothless Grin Kim of the Secular Strike Back, and I'll see you next time.